So let's talk about your emotional eating triggers and how you can use them to resolve this pattern. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And I wanted to talk about triggers. Triggers are so important to finding your emotional eating pattern and to dive deeper into what is really going on for you. So a lot of the times what we see when we emotionally eat is the tip of the iceberg. It is where we see ourselves going towards food. We might realize after we've emotionally eaten or binged that we were taken over, and we just see the episode of emotional eating. But this is just the after effect of a trigger. So something triggered us and it automatically made us go towards food to soothe ourselves. So this is what we're seeing. And when I was going through my emotional eating journey, this is what I saw too. And I was trying in that moment, sometimes grasping to stop myself or feeling so much shame after I emotionally ate. Like, why did I do that? Why did I emotionally eat? Like, why can't I stop myself? Why do I feel hungry all the time? Why do I feel so out of control? And if we just think in that moment we have to stop our emotional eating and we don't understand that there are triggers to this, we're gonna get stuck. And so emotional eating, we need to understand, is a coping mechanism, which means that it's a pattern that is running with a lot of power, and we would have developed this coping mechanism from a really young age. So it's been there a really long time. It's been repeated so many times, it's now subconscious and it lives in our body. And when it's triggered, it has 95% power. And so a coping mechanism, and why we use food, is because whenever any discomfort or distress or unresolved events happen to us at a young age, we didn't have resolution. Our parents or caregivers weren't able to help us move through the emotions, the event, to get to resolution, and we were left with this discomfort in our body. And when we're left with this discomfort in our body, these uncomfortable emotions and sensations, it feels uncomfortable, and we need something to make us feel better or take the edge off or numb or distract from the pain. And so food becomes a really obvious choice. So we go towards food to soothe ourselves. And so now this pattern has become so automatic. And if you're living a life that has, you might notice this pattern rears its head when you have more stress, or you don't have it, you're waiting for life to calm down, and it's sort of in these waves. And maybe you might think for a little bit of time you're okay, and then something happens and you're back in the pattern. So when this happens, we have to look at your triggers and what's going on for you. And so the best way to do that is to start noticing your emotional eating. When is it happening? Is it a certain time of day? Is it when you're around a certain person? Is it when you're at work? Is it when you think a certain thing? Just notice what you see happening. And so this was one of the first steps I took when I was starting to resolve my emotional eating. I started to notice when I would emotionally eat. And even before I noticed when I would emotionally eat, I started to learn about true versus emotional hunger, because I didn't know the difference. And I thought, I'd only know after the fact, after I emotionally ate, that, I wasn't really hungry. Like, I just ate a bunch of stuff. And so if we can start learning to discern true from emotional hunger, we can start catching our triggers. So if you want to find out how to do that, you can download my free guide called What Are You Truly Hungry For? I'll put the link below, and it'll help you get a clearer idea of what true hunger looks like and emotional hunger looks like. And once you have that, you can start seeing your emotional eating episodes more clearly. Like maybe, for a lot of clients of mine, they emotionally eat in the afternoon or late at night, or they go out to lunch with their friends or dinner, and then they find themselves, they can't stop themselves from eating, even though they don't feel great. And so they're sort of triggered in these situations. And so we want to make sure that you're actually emotionally eating, because if you've been using diets to restrict yourself and try to control your eating, you might actually be binging out of starvation, out of not getting enough food. So we have to look at that and discern that. But once you find your emotional eating triggers, once you notice your pattern around when you emotionally eat, you can start looking at what might be triggering you. in the outside world, sort of, if there's a time of day, a person, a place, a situation, you can start looking at that. And that's going to give you more awareness of when you're triggered. This doesn't mean you avoid those triggers or you avoid those people or those places or those situations. It means you dive in deeper. And so I want to give you a client example. So I had a client in my program, and we had been working through, obviously, her emotional eating, and she found a trigger. So she had been noticing that every time she went out to have dinner with her girlfriends, she would start emotionally eating, and she didn't know why. And so what we did, because she knew she was triggered in that moment because she had been nourishing herself, connecting to her body, she knew it was a true emotional eating trigger. And so what we noticed, and what I noticed for her after doing the deeper work, is that when she is out around friends, she wants to be externally validated. She wants people to see her, to compliment her, to tell her she's thin or she's lost weight. And right now where she's living, she's always been the same size. So in the past, when she had lost weight, people would always notice because she was in the same environment, and she'd get a lot of compliments, and that would validate her, give her this external validation and make her feel seen and accepted, but it was coming from the outside. But now she was in a new city and she didn't have a change in her body. Everyone just knew her as she was. And so her friends wouldn't compliment her physically. And that was a really deep need of hers, because being thin and looking a certain way as a child was really valued by her family. And there were comments about her body constantly. And so when we did the deeper work, we started to notice this was a trigger. She was expecting, when she was around her friends, to be validated, to be complimented. And when she didn't get that, she wouldn't feel good enough. She would feel shame, and that shame would trigger her emotional eating, because that's how she soothes herself, how she numbs from discomfort, or how she distracts herself. And so our brain is so smart. It's so efficient. It creates this pattern and it automatically jumps into it. And so we figured out that's why it's happening. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the journey. We have to dive in deeper into that trigger to get to the root and start meeting her true needs. So we have to resolve that situation. We have to get to the root event that created that pattern for her, and start resolving it and meeting her deeper inner needs, meeting her deep needs, her emotional needs on a body somatic level, because this is where this event, this root lives, this trauma, this unresolved event lives. And so we need to get into the body and we need to resolve it. When we resolve it, we're actually meeting our true needs and showing ourselves a new way of meeting our needs, so that food can't be the band-aid. So our brain doesn't think, I need a band-aid, so I'm going to go to food. When your body receives what it actually needs, food cannot take that place. And so what happened when we did this deeper work in the somatic meditations that are part of the program is that we resolve that deeper root. And the next day, she could feel that shift in her body. The next day, when she went out for a work lunch where she'd normally feel anxious and she'd have the similar feelings, she felt calm and at ease in her body and around food. And she didn't have this agitation that she'd feel around others, because we had now met her deep inner needs, and food can't fill that void. And she had resolved that at a deep level, that she felt more whole and confident just as she was. And so this is the power of triggers. They're going to give us a doorway, a gateway into our pattern. And when we have the right tools to resolve it at the root, we start meeting our true needs, so food can no longer fill that hole. And we start moving out of coping with food to actually just living our life and thriving and being able to be with discomfort, being able to meet our needs. And this is like an exhale in the body. When we do this, we're actually giving ourselves what we need. We are moving into thriving from survival. And so the reason we started coping is, as children, developmentally, we cannot give this to ourselves. We needed our parents or caregivers to do this for us. And if they weren't able to help us move through our discomfort, our emotions, our unresolved these unresolved events and help us meet our deeper emotional needs by being that safe space, we now need to do it as adults. We need to go back and create that for ourselves so that we're no longer looking and grasping for one, external validation from others, which we might not always get. And then if we don't get it, looking to food to fill that hole. And so this is how we create resolution. Obviously, there are different steps to this. We have to move through learning to connect back to food and our body and then getting into these triggers. But this leads to sustainable change around this pattern because you will no longer use food to soothe yourself. And so if you want to get started on learning how to do this, like I mentioned, I have a free resource called What Are You Truly Hungry For? And it's a guide that helps you discern true from emotional hunger and to start catching your triggers. This is a doorway into the pattern. And if you'd like to dive in deeper, you want more support on this journey, you can find out more about my 12-week program, the Emotional Eating Evolution Program. Inside of the program, you get the step-by-step process on how to move through and resolve your emotional eating. You get support, you get guidance and the in-depth tools like the deeper somatic meditations to get to the root of this and shift the pattern. And so if you want to find out more about that program, you can find out more at the links below. If you have any questions about what I've shared today, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.